In the 1970s, every day was filled with its own unique sensations and little things that today seem almost forgotten. This decade, in which the habits and tastes of an entire generation were formed, provided a special atmosphere that is elusive to those born later. Sounds, smells, details of everyday life. All this created a special world full of small joys and discoveries. Those who grew up in those years keep in their memory moments that seem simple today, but meant much more back then. Have you ever wondered what little things could make childhood real? What exactly made each day special, and why these memories warm your heart decades later? It is these details, almost invisible at first glance, that create a vivid picture of an era that cannot be replicated. In a world without smartphones and instant access to information, every moment became unique and unrepeatable. Simple joys, playing outside, meeting friends, or a favorite song on the radio became real treasures. These memories remind us how important it is to appreciate the present and notice the beauty in the little things. Memories of the 70s are a little bridge to the past that you can always walk over again to feel that genuine joy and freedom. Which of these things now seem the most precious to you, and which little things of today will be remembered tomorrow? Hanna-Barbera or Peanuts cartoon coverlet? A thin, slightly rough to the touch bedspread lay on top of the bed, perpetually a little skewed. It depicted characters faded from washing, Snoopy, Charlie Brown, or Fred Flintstone, with worn facial features. The fabric smelled of sunshine, sheets, and a little bit of time. It wasn't warm, but it was a necessary part of the ritual. It was used for daytime naps, wrapped up while lying on the floor in front of the TV, or made into a cloak. Its edge was always wrapped inside, as if it knew itself to be cozy. When it was stretched out on the lawn, it became a picnic tablecloth. Sometimes it was also a tent, bundled with kitchen chairs and clothespins. The blanket accompanied not only days, but also dreams. We drew on it with crayons, put our favorite toys on it, ate cereal. It has survived poured juice, chocolate, and felt-tip pen marks. After each wash, it lost a little color, but it only seemed more familiar. In the morning, it was wrinkled and warm, with the marks of the night. The fabric was starting to frizz around the edges, little lint forming, but no one offered to replace it. It was the bedspread. It stayed in the closet even when it was no longer needed. Sometimes a puppy or a little brother would fall asleep on it, and it would come to life again. It wasn't just a piece of fabric. It was a reminder of safety and home. In the winter, it smelled like a radiator. In the summer, like wood from the window and fresh air. In the nightlight, the pattern seemed almost invisible, but to the touch, everything was there. The lines of the cartoon faces were imprinted in my memory forever. There was more comfort in those simple images than any fancy toy. When it was put away, the room became strangely empty, but it always came back, as childhood returns in smells, touches, and images. The smell of school eraser and wooden pencils with yellow casing too. The pencils were always neatly sharpened at the beginning of the day, and the eraser was a little rubbed off at the corners. The yellow case glistened, especially under the school light. There was a pink-colored eraser at the tip that started to crumble almost immediately. The smell of wood mixed with the smell of rubber and graphite created an air of concentration. As the sharpener began to work, the air was filled with the aroma of fresh shavings. These smells were an integral part of tests, dictations, and math lessons. Pencils often cracked along the body, and then you had to press carefully. Sometimes the eraser erased not only the mistake, but also half of the page. There were always a few of these pencils in the desk drawer, and they rolled around a bit with each movement. Some kids had erasers in the shape of fruit, but the classic ones always smelled stronger. That smell was coming from the morning, from the moment the notebook was first opened. It was absorbed in the paper, in the fingers, in the process of studying. The erasers were dented by fingernails. Sometimes they were played with, making impromptu battles on the edges of the desks. Some pencils had the smell of lacquer or even something sweet, but the classic mix of wood and rubber was the real deal. Time passed, but the smell remained. In the pencil case, in my backpack, in my memory. Over the years, these pencils were lost, broken, given as gifts, but the association with them remained. It was the aroma of knowledge, first notes, and neat lines. In it lived the expectation of something new, and the slight excitement of a multiplication table written in perfectly smooth handwriting. The eraser smelled of cleanliness, not Snow White, but paper, educational. It was always at hand, as was the small assurance that everything could be corrected. A machine for punching out price tags in the store. The body of the machine was heavy and cold, a metallic sheen with plastic inserts. It sounded confident in the clerk's hands. A short click, the tape hissed, it came off. The yellow or orange sticker was stamped with thick black numbers, 1.99 or 3.49. These numbers were a little crooked, but recognizable. Sometimes the tape would jam, and the salesman would shake the machine angrily. The counters were strewn with price tags like a leaf fall of stickers. Children played with these stickers, tearing them off and sticking them to their hands. On packages of pasta, boxes of cereal, bottles of juice, price tags were everywhere. Sometimes one was stuck on top of the other, and the old price would show through from underneath. The machine seemed like a grown-up tool, almost like a cash register. It was used with a special rhythm, as if conducting the process of trade. Sometimes the sound could be heard through the whole store. In the toy department, the stickers looked especially important. When the store changed the price, they would take off the old tape and put on the new one. In the warehouse, the car lay in a box, but its crunch was memorable. Even years later, it evoked images of supermarkets with low shelves. It smelled of plastic, metal, and a little bit of paper. When the salesman pressed the handle, it seemed as if he was creating something important. It was the sound that started the grocery shopping trip. For the child, it was a symbol of the adult world, clear, mechanical, rhythmic. These price tags were later found on school pencil cases, notebooks, even on the closet. The machine was invisible, but its traces were everywhere. And although today everything is automated, that crunch is still alive in my memory. Manual, predictable, warm, Tupperware plastic mugs and sippy cups. Tupperware plastic mugs and sippy cups were on kitchen shelves, in cupboards, and on dining tables. They had a characteristic matte surface, slightly rough to the touch. The colors were pastel, pale pink, mint green, sky blue, creamy yellow. They were lightweight but almost indestructible. They didn't crack even when dropped on tile. The plastic was hand-warmed and kept warm, especially when fruit juice was poured in. The lids had tight seals that had to be pressed down firmly. Sometimes the lids warped slightly over time, but still closed. Non-spilling glasses had a special ring or spout, convenient for babies. They left traces of little teeth, scuffs, and sticky finger marks. They evoked associations with afternoon snacks, mugs of cocoa, compote, and sweet tea. The micro cracks inside the plastic played in the light like spider webs. These mugs were easy to wash, but forever retained the slight odor of beverages, grapes, apple, or strawberries. They were taken on picnics, on the road, to children's camps. Sometimes small toys or buttons were put in them. They were as much a part of the kitchen landscape as curtains and arranged plates. When a mug was lost, it was noticed immediately. It was theirs. Some families used them for decades. They were recognized at first sight, even in someone else's kitchen. A child's hand would wrap around it fully and it wouldn't slip out. Some mugs had a slight vanilla odor, from leftover drink or just from time. It was an object not flashy, but warm, as if specifically designed for the home. Even when the children grew up, one of these mugs sometimes remained as a memory of the kitchen light and family breakfast. The lunch bell in the school cafeteria rang sharply, with a metallic clang, like a pot being hit with a spoon. It echoed through the hallways, echoing off the tiled walls. After it, there was a brief commotion. Chairs creaked, trays rattled, and footsteps became hurried. The line for serving formed quickly, shoulder to shoulder, with quiet conversations and muffled laughter. The air was filled with the smell of tomato soup, melted cheese, and warmed bread. The trays were plastic, divided into cells. In one was a sandwich, in another a compote, and in a third a fruit or cookie. Sometimes the canteen gave out porridge or pasta with meat sauce, but sandwiches with melted cheese remained favorites. Almost everyone reached for ketchup, and red drops and streaks appeared on the tables. Dishes clinked, voices merged into a hum. There were tray return boxes against the wall, and everything rattled especially loudly there. Occasionally, someone would spill a drink, and a red puddle would crawl across the tile. Someone traded an apple for a pie. Someone secretly wrapped a cookie in a napkin. The dining room was both noisy and cozy. The metallic clinking of spoons against trays was a reminder of routine and small pleasures. Everyone had a favorite table, by the window, by the radiator, or closer to the exit. Sometimes you had to hurry to avoid being left at the end of the line. Time was short, and every moment counted. After the meal, things started moving again. Chairs creaked, trays went into piles. But the dinner bell was the very signal that the day had been interrupted for a moment, for something simple and important. A warm meal, the noise of friends, the feeling of being cared for. Stone candy and caramel in wrappers from Grandma. Stone candy and caramel wrapped in thin paper with colorful drawings were always in a bowl on the sideboard. The wrappers sometimes stuck together, especially if the room was hot. The lollipops were different colors, scarlet, amber, green, and transparent, almost like pieces of glass. Sometimes the caramel would drip a little and leave sticky marks on the paper and hands. Grandma always kept them in a prominent place, a treat for surprise guests or an after-dinner dessert. Their sound, tinkling and crunchy, reminded me of the simple joys of childhood. The lollipops were so hard they seemed like little jewels, and they had to be sucked on very slowly to stretch the pleasure. When one piece was finished, the urge to take the next was strong, and the smell of sweet caramel filled the air. Sometimes the lollipops had unusual fruit flavors, cherry, orange, mint, that lingered on the tongue for a long time. The wrappers rustled when unwrapped, and the smell of the paper mingled with the caramel flavor. There was often a mug of hot tea or cocoa next to the bowl. Stone lollipops were part of the tradition. Every Sunday or holiday they were pulled out for the children. They didn't just melt in the mouth, they filled the house with warmth and comfort. These sweets evoked nostalgia for a time when the world seemed simpler and joy more accessible. Their taste was preserved in the memory as a symbol of childhood, carefree and love. They were a small but important ritual, like the soft touch of grandmother's hands. Stone lollipops and caramel with wrappers are a memory that simple things can bring real happiness and warmth to a home. Newspaper comics in the Sunday editions. Newspaper comic strips in the Sunday editions looked like bright and large pages, sometimes even spreads, full of color and humor. They were printed on thin, slightly rustling paper that was a pain to crumple or tear. The most common characters were Garfield with his lazy smile, Good Snoopy, and Calvin and Hobbes with their fantasies and mischief. Comics filled Sunday mornings. The first pages were read slowly, with a smile, swallowing each panel. The colors were rich, but sometimes faded in places due to time. The pictures came alive as they moved from one square to the next, creating little stories that were memorable for a lifetime. Sometimes after reading, the comics were folded neatly and placed on a shelf or in a box of magazines. Their pages smelled of fresh printing ink, which was associated with a private time to oneself. Comic books brought joy not only to children, but also to adults, becoming an occasion for family discussion. Sometimes there were pencils and a notebook next to the newspaper, where someone would try to draw similar pictures. It was hard to stop laughing at the characters' pranks or thinking about unexpected plot twists. Sunday comics became a little ritual, a weekend gift. Each story held simple wisdom and a sense of lightness. They reminded us that even in everyday life, we could find a reason to smile. In the evenings, we would sometimes revisit our favorite issues, retelling the characters' dialogues to each other. Newspaper comics are a part of childhood, which over the years turns into a cozy memory and a symbol of carefree life. Small plastic TV set with a battery-operated antenna handle. The small plastic TV set with a battery-operated antenna handle was compact and lightweight, ideal for carrying around. The screen was black and white and rather murky. The images had to be adjusted for a long time to get any kind of clear silhouette. The antenna with several bends allowed to catch the signal, but often the picture flickered or twitched. The sound from the speakers was quiet, with occasional noise or static. The TV was turned on with care, trying to conserve batteries. It was an important companion for traveling, camping, and evening waits. Sometimes it was put in a child's room to watch favorite cartoons or shows without depending on the big TV in the living room. The case was brightly colored, plastic, with large buttons that were easy to press even with small fingers. There was a battery compartment on the back that was often opened to replace batteries. Sometimes the TV was accidentally dropped, and it continued to work, only slightly scratched. In the evenings when it got dark, the screen glowed with a soft bluish glow, creating a special atmosphere of coziness. The sound of rain outside the window and the warmth of home were associated with it. Despite its technical limitations, the small TV set gave a sense of independence and control over the viewing experience. It was a window to a world that seemed much wider and more interesting. A small plastic TV set with a battery-operated antenna handle has forever remained a symbol of childhood, when even simple things were filled with magic and meaning. A 1970s Lincoln profile penny with a bright red copper luster. The 1970s Lincoln profile penny had a distinctive bright red copper luster that time and decades had yet to rub off. The coins looked almost new with a clearly legible Abraham Lincoln profile and inscriptions on the edges. Their smoothness and luster made you want to look at every detail, from the wrinkles on the face to the lettering. Often these coins found their way into pockets, purses, and piggy banks, becoming their first experience with money. Their weight was light but tangible, and the sound when they hit the table was resounding. The penny from the 70s was not only money, but a collector's item. They were put in piggy banks, changed at gumball and candy machines. These coins witnessed many purchases from gum to newspapers. The coins were not yet worn, so they seemed new and in some ways even magical. Sometimes pennies were found in the crevices of couches or the pockets of old jackets, reminding us of days gone by. They held the scent of metal and the dust of time, which could be felt at every touch. A penny from the 1970s with a bright red luster is not just a small thing, but part of the story of childhood and financial independence of the first pennies. Textbooks with a cloth spine and plastic covers issued at school were real textbooks, covered with a protective film that glittered and wrinkled in places. The sturdy cloth spine allowed the textbook to last a long time, withstanding constant opening and closing. The cover had lettering with the name of the district's school, subject, and sometimes logos. Inside, the pages were thick, with neatly printed text and pictures. In some textbooks, you could see notes and markings from previous students made in pencil or pen. Sometimes there were test dates, marker highlights, or small sketches in the margins. The plastic cover protected the textbooks from water spills or accidental stains. The textbooks smelled of printing ink and paper, which sometimes made me want to leaf through them again and again. They served not only as a source of knowledge, but also as an object of pride. One's own textbook looked important and meaningful. The cloth spine darkened over the years, and the pages turned yellow and brittle. Textbooks kept the memory of school years, of the first successes and difficulties. Sometimes on the back cover, there was an insert with a schedule of lessons or a list of teachers. Textbooks with a cloth spine and plastic covers were part of the school ritual, a symbol of adulthood and responsibility. Battery-operated hand fan with soft blades. The battery-operated hand fan with soft blades was a marvel of technology on hot summer days. Its lightweight plastic hummed pleasantly as the blades began to slowly rotate, bringing coolness to even the most stuffy room. The battery-powered hand fan with its soft blades wasn't very powerful, but that was the beauty of it. It was always handy, and you could direct the air directly to your face or neck. At times it seemed that this little gadget could relieve fatigue and remove moisture from the skin with its mere presence. The battery-powered hand fan with soft blades was light and compact. It was comfortable in the hand and did not interfere with conversations or watching TV. On hot days, its appearance became a small event, and it was often seen outside by children playing in parks. The batteries had to be changed regularly, otherwise the fan would start spinning hard or stop altogether. But this did not diminish its popularity. The battery-powered hand fan with its soft blades was also something funny. Sometimes the blades caught on hair or clothing, causing laughter. Its bright colors, from acid green to bright orange, made it stand out among other things. Summer vacations and outings were associated with this small object that saved from the heat at the most unexpected moments. A battery-operated hand fan with soft blades was not a necessity, but rather a nice little thing that made the heat easier to bear. Mailboxes with a flag that went up when the mail arrived. Mailboxes with a flag that went up when the mail arrived were part of everyday life in every home. This flag raised up was the real signal that there was a letter or postcard waiting in the box. Mailboxes with a flag that went up when the mail arrived were a thrill to run out and check to see what had arrived today. Sometimes the flag would go up so fast that it looked like the mailman had just barely delivered the letter. Mailboxes with a flag that went up when the mail arrived were made of wood or metal, often decorated with hand-painted patterns or stickers with the family's name. They stood on a long leg at the edge of the lawn, near the sidewalk, and every passing acquaintance knew that the flag box signified a small event in the house. Mailboxes with a flag that went up when the mail came in were sometimes the object of jokes if someone forgot to remove the flag after picking up the mail. The flag was a simple but reliable indicator of living communication with the outside world. Mailboxes with a flag that went up when the mail arrived evoked a sense of anticipation, letters from friends, postcards from faraway places, or important notices. The flag went up and down, becoming a silent witness to many days and events. Glass milk or soda bottles returned to the store. The glass milk or soda bottles returned to the store had a special meaning and value. These bottles were heavy and cold to the touch, with thick walls and metal caps that made a distinctive sound when open. The glass milk or soda bottles returned back to the store were part of a reuse system where each bottle traveled a long way from the factory to the refrigerator in the house and back again. Returning these bottles was a sort of small ritual. Clean them carefully, put them in a box or bag, and go to the store. Glass milk or soda bottles returned back to the store were collected throughout the neighborhood, and often a family would receive a small discount or change for each bottle turned in. These bottles had simple but recognizable labels with logos and bright colors. The glass milk or soda bottles returned back to the store always smelled fresh and cold, and sometimes had a slight odor of beverage left inside. Cleaning them and preparing them for return took time and was part of family responsibilities. Returnable bottles served as proof of caring for nature and saving money, even before these ideas became fashionable. The glass milk or soda bottles returned to the store looked almost the same to everyone. A tall, narrow neck, a thick bottom, and a metal cap that had to be opened with a bottle opener. A synthetic mesh hammock that left imprints on the skin. The synthetic mesh hammock that left imprints on the skin was a backyard favorite. Its soft but resilient mesh lent itself to the body, but the patterns remained on the skin long minutes after getting up. The synthetic mesh hammock that left imprints on his skin creaked as he swayed and stretched between two sturdy trees, inviting him to relax and forget. Its colors, bright blue-greens or reds, stood out against the greenery of the garden. The synthetic mesh hammock that left imprints on his skin was sometimes a little prickly, but that didn't stop him from spending hours in it, reading books or just watching the clouds. It became the centerpiece of summer days and a gathering place with friends. The synthetic mesh hammock, which left imprints on the skin, made a distinctive sound when it swung, a gentle creak and rustle. Its mesh could stretch and tear, but careful repairs allowed the hammock to be used for a long time. This hammock was both cozy and a little uncomfortable, reminding of the simple joys of life. Bulky radios with large rotary knobs and long antennas were honored in the living room or kitchen. Bulky radios with large rotary knobs and a long antenna had a place of honor in the living room or kitchen. Their weight and size made them immobile, but the sound coming from the speakers filled the house with life and news. Bulky radios with large twisting knobs and a long antenna required careful tuning to catch the right wave. And even then, interference and quiet background noise were often heard. Their plastic casing was covered with scratches and fingerprints, and the knobs twisted with effort to change volume or frequency. Bulky radios with large twisting knobs and a long antenna were a source of not only music, but also broadcasts of important events and favorite radio programs. The long antenna sometimes caught on curtains or furniture and had to be carefully straightened. These radios were a symbol of an era when the announcer's voice reached every home. The bulky radios with their large rotating knobs and long antenna had a special character and sound that could not be replaced by modern gadgets. Laces with sequins and neon colors that were sold in sets. Laces with sequins and neon colors became a real fashion accessory that complemented any look. These brightly colored laces were often sold in sets with acid green, bright pink, and electric blue shades next to each other. Laces with sequins and neon colors could easily come undone, especially if steps became fast or shoes were not too comfortable. They tangled into knots that sometimes took several minutes to untangle, especially after playing outside. Laces with sequins and neon colors were so noticeable that even a simple pair of sneakers immediately turned into a bright element of style. In the evening, they reflected the light of street lamps, creating a light glow. Laces with sequins and neon colors were an important detail of clothing, especially for teenagers who wanted to stand out among their peers. Their odor often lingered from the factory materials, reminiscent of plastic and rubber. Laces with sequins and neon colors could be paired with bright socks or disco-style jackets. They were often swapped between sneakers and sometimes even braided to wear as a bracelet. Laces with sequins and neon colors created a mood, helped to express individuality, and brought a drop of fun into everyday life. Thermoses with metal screw-on lid and superhero designs. Thermoses with metal screw-on lids and superhero designs were frequent companions of school lunches and trips. Their metal lid was easy to screw on and served as a cup that stayed warm even after hours. Thermoses with screw-on metal lids and superhero designs kept odors inside, most often soup or hot cocoa, that became almost indelible and remained in the plastic and metal for months. Their brightly colored images, with characters from comic books and cartoons, made thermoses desirable and popular with children. Thermoses with screw-on metal lids and superhero drawings were often exchanged or given as birthday gifts. Sometimes a lid would fit snugly and be a little tight, requiring effort to open. Thermoses with screw-on metal lids and superhero drawings not only kept drinks warm, but also made you feel cozy and cared for. They were made to withstand bumps and drops, and the scratches on the drawings only added to their character. Thermoses with screw-on metal lids and superhero designs were often carried in backpacks or bags, filling them with warmth and flavor. Doorbells with a chime built into the walls. In-wall doorbells sounded loud and long, filling the house with a familiar sound. Their metal buzzer made a long psss sound that could be heard throughout the rooms, interrupting the silence and gathering the household. Doorbells with a trill built into the walls often had a metal casing that vibrated, creating a bright and distinct sound. They were solidly built into the walls near the front door, and the bell button had a distinctive convex shape. Doorbells with a trill built into the walls became part of everyday life, and their sound was associated with unexpected guests or long-awaited parcels. Sometimes the bell would go off accidentally, by wind or touch, but usually it was an event to which everyone reacted quickly. Doorbells with a trill built into the walls filled the house with sonic tones that were memorable for a lifetime. They sounded loud and long, leaving no chance of missing a visitor. Night lamps with rotating disc and projection of stars or characters on the wall. Night lamps with a rotating disc and projection of stars or characters on the wall created a magical atmosphere in the children's room. Their dim light softly illuminated the space, while the slowly rotating disc projected bright silhouettes of stars, planets, or cartoon characters on the walls. Night lamps with a rotating disc and projection of stars or characters on the wall became a soothing ritual before going to bed, creating a feeling of coziness and security. These lamps had a plastic body, often in pastel colors, with a small handle for easy carrying. Night lamps with a spinning disc and projection of stars or characters on the wall were often used for several years at a time, becoming part of childhood and family traditions. The spinning disc could change colors and create smooth transitions, putting you to sleep and filling the room with magic. Night lamps with a spinning disc and projection of stars or characters on the wall helped to develop imagination, transported to the world of dreams and fantasies. They were simple, but very favored accessories. Triangular milk cartons in the school canteen that were difficult to open. The triangular milk cartons in the school canteen, which were difficult to open, became a symbol of school lunches. They had to be taken carefully so as not to tear the bag completely and spill the milk. The triangular milk cartons in the school cafeteria, which were difficult to open, required precise pressure and careful tearing of the corner. Sometimes the milk would spill out in a trickle or in the most inappropriate place, on a notebook, table, or clothes. The triangular milk cartons in the school cafeteria, which were difficult to open, were made of thin but strong film decorated with simple but recognizable logos. The milk in these bags always seemed fresh and cold, even if several hours had passed since opening. The triangular milk cartons in the school cafeteria, which were difficult to open, were often the subject of discussion and laughter among the students. These packets were part of a lunch ritual that was repeated every day and created a sense of unity and habit. By facing this small problem over and over again, the children learned neatness and patience. Every little thing from that time is like a piece of the whole world, which today cannot be returned, but which remains forever in the hearts of those who lived in the 70s. These memories are not just pictures from the past, but living feelings that remind us how important it is to appreciate moments and see the beauty in everyday life. Times change, but memory holds what is truly meaningful. In these little things is the key to understanding the era and yourself. What from those days still warms your soul and makes you smile? If you want to save such moments and discover more stories of the past, subscribe to the channel. There are many interesting things to come.